Hello again and welcome again to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. We are in Dusseldorf in Germany at the SDN and OpenFlow World Congress 2014, and I'm talking with Nico Fischbach of Colt. Nico, good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Straight after lunch. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay. My first question to you is this. What broad SDN and NFV deployments are out there now? Presumably they're still pretty rare.
They're still rare. I mean, there's a lot of proof of concepts, as you can see here at the show. At Colt, we've been paving the way now for quite a few developments in SDN and NFV. We've launched vCPE a couple of years ago now, which predates NFV. We're going to launch the next phase, which is going to be cloud-based. We've already deployed an SDN-based data center using an SDN overlay technique in Paris. We plan to roll that out to further locations. Our, how we call it, little sister company in Japan called KVH has also gone live with a platform to deliver next generation 100 gig carrier Ethernet services. So we really start to see developments and deployments in the live environments, serving carrier grade services to customers.
Okay, thank you. Well, look, the hype phase of NFV and SDN is now behind us. We can see reality looming, and real life. Things have got to work in the way they're supposed to. This is now 3 years old, this event. It's a remarkable event. The first one in Darmstadt a couple of years ago, 300 people. Very successful, marvellous networking. Last year, Bad Homburg improved upon that. Again, this year in Dusseldorf now, there are 1,300 delegates. The place is sold out. It's rammed. It's obviously very popular, and it's very important. That's fine. But the difference between Darmstadt and now, how have the industry and the industry's movers and shakers changed their perceptions of SDN and NFV? And what are their expectations now as compared to a couple of years ago?
As you said, hype is over. I'm not too sure yet. If you look at the amount of marketing you still see happening, I mean, there's still a lot of smoke and mirrors. Obviously, I think the proof of concepts are trying to show that a lot of things exist, but also that a lot of stuff needs to be built.
Sure.
I think there's also, still the perception that there's a market to take. We've been talking to dozens and dozens of startups. So there's the existing incumbents. We're trying to transform also to adapt to this new world. But the sheer amount of startups around here who have interesting offerings, moving into more the open source side of the story, and so on, is still pretty massive. So we see a lot of that has happened over the years. That's more kind of the NFV side of things. On the SDN side, on NFV, the ETSI working group is just starting the third year. We were part of the working group that started the first instance, so to say, of NFV back in October 2012. Long way has come. We've done a lot. We've deployed a lot. At the same time, reality kicked in. So I think you mentioned reality. We start to see that. We realized at Colt that there's only so much innovation a business can absorb every year. So we clearly know that we need to transform. If we don't, the unit cost we need to reach, the velocity we need to have to deliver services, the churn we have to manage, the demands from our customers. We cannot answer all those questions and many more if we don't transform the business. But we realize that technology is pretty easy. So a lot of the things you will see here from vendors are somehow easy to implement. They're probably working, but the environments you need to implement it to have also become much more complex. So at some point, SDN is about abstraction and simplicity. On the other hand side, what you're trying to do is hide, the complexity, by hiding more layers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we see happening. But we see these transformations happen. What we still need to do is transform the organization. So service provider, telcos, data center providers, IT services providers, and there it's down to people. I think we might talk about a little bit about that later on. But that's where we see that the hype has actually stopped and the reality has kicked in.
So, given the fact that now the boot is on the other foot, you mentioned open source, mentioned also the fact that these days the service providers, the telcos, the operators are no longer willing to be locked into a single vendor or a couple of vendors. They want to be able to have open source based kit that they can stitch together in any which way they want to provide the new services and applications. Do you think, and I know that organizational change in telcos is a problem, do you think the carriers understand or understood quite what a big undertaking it is? As you said, technology fine, that's manageable. What about the changes that allows them to take full advantage of it?
I think most of them are still in the very early days of understanding what needs to happen, how they need to transform. I think everybody has been jumping on the bandwagon, open source, OpenStack, Open Daylight, OP NFV. I mean, it's all about that. The reality is, somebody will have to manage this complexity. You need to have people in the organization with the right skills that can, develop, operate, maintain, can at the same time, think of the big picture, but also drill down into the details. And those skills don't really exist. They exist in Web 2.0 companies. Do they exist in telcos, service providers, IT services companies? Probably still very, very limited. But that's what we need to happen. So, the other thing is, from experience, we've been looking at buying packaged solutions. So it's open source based, taking OpenStack, but you're going to buy commercial version from some vendor. But then every single vendor is going to come with its own version of OpenStack, packaged in its own way. And we don't, the silos we had somewhere today, we don't want to get rid of them and create new silos somewhere else or duplication. So that's what people need to understand. I think where we got so far in our NFV approach is exactly that. We understood in the process how to build those various domains, what needs to be part of those various domains, and where we need to avoid duplication, so that going forward, what you talked about is openness, the APIs and so on, we can actually consume it. I think there's still a long way to go too. I mean, it's not because you have an API that the API is easy to consume, that the API is working as expected, that you can just rip and replace. So there's a lot of good ideas there. I think the vendor lock-in, everybody wants to get rid of it. The reality is it's not just like an overnight switch that's going to happen.
So here at the show, there's a hall full of proof of concept models, demonstrations showing the reality of NFV and SDN. What do you make of that? There are a lot of proof of concepts out there. So many have been accepted by the various standards bodies. Do you think they're fully representative of what things should be, or do you think they should be more inclusive?
I think the landscape of prototypes is pretty good. I haven't looked at all of them, but the ones we're interested in, being a business-to-business service provider, they're interesting. So there's the business cloud CPE one, which is virtually an evolution, to use the virtual word, of what we've done in the virtual CPE concept. So we like this one a lot. There's many more on the SDN side that we like. There's transformation we would also like to see in the IMS and soft switch world, so for voice IP domains and so on, and IMS domains. This is still very early days. I don't think the vendor are completely ready for that, but that's where we also see change that needs to happen. The other one, which is quite interesting, is not a POC. It's actually the showcase of what is live in other environments. I mentioned what we've done at Colt. Also KVH, is demoing some of their Carrier Ethernet platform that's going to deliver 100 gig Carrier Ethernet, fully embracing SDN in Japan with a partner company here. So there's a lot of variety, a lot of POCs, POCs that are going to prove or disprove that the stuff actually works and scales. What the limitations I still see with those POCs, they are very technical. And technology is easy, you can always build it in the lab, the POC is easy. What we need to understand is what's the unit cost, what are the SLAs, what are the commercials? And I think that's really the big question that's up on us, that we also find out in the RFI we did recently, is how do we make the commercials work going forward? Both for the vendors, but also for us and our customers.
So you can prove the technology.
Yes.
In practice, in theory and in practice.
In practice.
But the practice, when it's applied to an organization, a tier 1, tier 2 telco service provider, whatever it may be, is a different issue.
It is. I mean, what we didn't want to do is just take what we have, so the same products with the same features, and do a like-for-like upgrade into the virtual world. There's no point, because you keep carrying legacy forward, and you realize that at some point the customers don't want to consume that. And we were very much thinking that the customer experience should stay the same in the old school world, in this new virtual world. Yeah. I think one of the lessons learned is also that we need to transform the customer experience. They might lose some things, but they're also going to gain a lot of new things. Bandwidth on demand, new user interactions, the way they consume it, the SLAs coming with it, the billing models coming with it. So this whole transformation is very important.
And back to open source again, we talked about ETSI and its NFV, ISG, and so on. KVH one in Japan is, I believe, Open Networking Foundation?
Yes, that one is under the ONF umbrella, correct.
Okay. What's the difference between, do you appreciate differences between the various standards bodies, as it were?
I've got some pretty strong opinions on some of the standards bodies. It's not just the SDOs. I think there's too many organizations. There are too many startups at the moment, and we're actually looking from some. It would be good to see some M&As, some acquisitions happening. The landscape should clear itself. I think it's a little bit the same with the various SDOs and working groups. It's not just ONF, ETSI, OpenNFV, Open Daylight, OpenStack, IETF. I mean, I can go on for probably half an hour.
But ETSI, for example, and the NFV ISG has a shelf life. It has an expected life that will be so long, and then they will terminate it.
Well, that was the early plan, right? When we launched the first white paper and shared it, the lifetime was actually 2 years.
That's right.
In the process now, you see it's being extended. So
yes.
I think it's going to carry on for a couple more years, just because people realized what type of change needs to happen also in the organization, what it means for the OSS stack to recreate the NFV model, what it means for compute, because it's a different type of compute. So I think they will be existing for a long time. ONF, I think I listened to Dan earlier today. I think he also realized in the process that they cannot just focus on OpenFlow as the protocol because it's one protocol in the toolbox. It's a bigger picture, and I think they're transforming a little bit the way MEF was, so the Mutual Ethernet Forum was, by certifying people, having market working groups and so on, which is more the business angle than just trying to drive and defend the technology, which I think is a good thing. But to me, too many organizations, too many SDOs, too many memorandum for understandings between them. Maybe not even resources in the industry, because honestly, there's only so many people that have those skills. Can you really share them and cut them into slices to have participation in each of them? Our view is that we want to focus. I cannot take one of my guys and have him work in 5 working groups. No, just not possible.
Spread too thin.
Yes, exactly, and that's one of the risks.
What we know from our knowledge and time in the industry is that consolidation happens constantly. So things will change.
Exactly. I think at the moment it's expanding. But we probably hit the wide scale, the full spectrum. Now it's time to focus the light a little bit again, I guess.
Nico, SDN and NFV are as much now about business trans. Let me do that again. Nico, SDN and NFV are now as much about business transformation as they are about technological transformation. What do you think are the most important items that SP service providers need to do from a business transformation perspective to ensure that they can take full advantage, maximum advantage of SDN and NFV?
There's quite a few things. There's the external side, so the services we offer to customers, they need to evolve. There's legacy we need to get rid of. There's new features we want to serve. There's the commercial wrap that's gonna be around the service with portals, user interaction, billing. There's a technical wrap. Most of our customers want to consume a service. They don't really care so much about the underlying technology. So that's something. It's more the go-to-market, how you expose yourself with a service wrap. That's one. The other one is really mostly internal. You need to communicate with the people internally. You need to upskill your organization. You need to look at the operating model. You can't just keep having the same service delivery, service assurance organization with this type of processes. You cannot follow the same old school waterfall life cycle for product development and projects. You need to combine it with agile. Going full agile, I don't believe in it just because of the size of the organizations. We operate in 22 plus or 24 countries. I don't even remember. The latest is, at some point, agile, has some limitations, and you need some more strict, gates to make sure that the right information gets to the right point, that you make the right tests, that you have the right trainings and handovers. But that's the type of things we saw in the process. I think I touched on innovation, same thing. We have lots of ideas. Some of them are pretty crazy ideas, which is good because we kind of be proving the state of the art or disproving the state of the art. But there's only so much resource-wise, money-wise, time-wise you can inject into an organization. So it's also this learning that we had over the years that we need to put into this company transformation, people transformation, business transformation activities internally. And they're very deeply linked. As I said, technology is easy, people is hard, but we know that people don't like change.
What about if the boot was on the other foot and you were in a service provider and you were in a team or you yourself had to prioritize what you were going to do? What would you look at first? Would you look at the business models? Would you look at the organization itself? Would you look at technologies? What would you look at? Existing and new services, so on. Where would you?
I'm a technologist, so I'm a technologist, and I'm an engineer. So I love, we used to be called hardware huggers, right? Or people that spend too much time on the CLI. Today I do more PowerPoint than command line interface, sadly, sometimes. But that's where I was sitting. With the innovation team that's now also reporting to me, we actually look at the business angle. We look at technology solutions, but we look at them with the angle: what does it mean for our customers? What's the benefit to them? Does the business case fly? Does it make any sense for you? Are we going to make money with that? So, this is a nice combination for me, because the engineer in me has to think business, more than, he used to in the past, or not just architecture, but, also, service and customer facing. And so what we did there, and we spend much more time with our customers. So we're focusing a lot on customer intimacy. So I'm going out, sometimes way too often, talk to customers to understand, what their business problem is, how we can help them. And, in the process, we learned a lot. They always have, it's always Christmas, wish list, all those cool things. In the end, they might buy, a tenth of it. But, it helps, in our process of thinking, of integrating this business demand into our technology lifecycle and our product development lifecycle.
Interesting. Nico Fischbach of Colt, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.